That's good.
We are recording.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. Let's see, just like another minute. Let's let people keep coming on in because they're coming on in. I think that this sending you reminders on Friday morning seems to be working. Heidi's shaking her head. Yep. Yep. Then I don't have to go back to my inbox after this and see, I was trying to get in, or I was totally signed up and forgot. Or I forgot you guys were at 9 Pacific, noon Eastern, or
Right, because you are being proactive.
proactive, Kathy. It's a new pharmaceutical. Proactive.
Sounds like it.
Proactive. It helps you get all the people you need on your Zoom call. Side effects include
Made with all natural ingredients.
made with all plants by the pharmaceutical industry.
I missed that.
Oh,
All right, let's get going.
are you ready? Okay,
I'll let them in.
okay, great. I won't say it, Kathy. Not gonna say it. Not gonna say it.
Well, it's the end of the week. Now, where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday.
Well, good morning. It's Friday. Hi, everyone. How are you? Welcome to episode 41. I can't believe it. I say this every week. I can believe it. I'm so happy. We've been able to do this for 41 weeks, and we're super excited to be with you this morning. Feedback Friday is our weekly show where we speak with artists, dyers, researchers, scholars, scientists, and writers, etc. Oh, and activists about our favorite subject, which is natural dyeing and color. I'm Kathy Hattori, president of Botanical Colors, and along with Amy Dufault, our director of sustainability and social media, we are so pleased to be able to present this episode with you, for you, to you. Before we start, though, I just want to say thank you, everyone. It has been a crazy time. And every week I'm like, yeah, it's getting better. But then something else crazy happens. So, yeah, I didn't know that space lasers were denominational, but I guess that's what it is. Anyways, space lasers, that's what causes all the wildfires now, is scientific fact. Yeah.
Space lasers.
So without your help and support and your participation, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you very much. Just wanted to go through housekeeping very quickly. Amy is our moderator. And so during the presentation, we will ask everybody to mute their microphones. And we also have the chat that will open up after Deepa finishes her talk. And you can put all your questions in chat. And Amy will moderate those and speak with Deepa, and Deepa will then provide us with all the details and answers that we need. And the call is also being recorded, and we'll have a video recording available at the this weekend, along with any additional information resulting from this call. So let me introduce our esteemed guest. Our presenter for Feedback Friday this week is Deepa Natarajan. Deepa is an ethnobotanist, natural dyer, and educator. And she has the unique ability to bridge this deep dive into scientific and cultural inquiry and connect this information to a lay audience, which is us. So I'm super excited about this. She's also the author of this charming dye book that says about 10 natural dye plants. And we're hoping to find out if that's going to be back in print or available to us at some point, because it's really a wonderful book. Deepa coordinates the UC Berkeley Botanical Gardens public education programs, and she educates as well as practices, has her own practice using plants for food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. So I'm very pleased to admit, where is Deepa? To present Deepa. And oh, good. All I see is no Deepas right now, but I'm glad you're still here. Deepa, the floor is all yours. Thank you for joining us, and take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Kathy, and to Amy. Should I just do that? Okay. So I'm really just so honored to be here and to be among this this group of speakers and this community. I've really admired Botanical Colors for so long, and this 40+ week-long series of incredible speakers is just amazing. And I'm just really humbled and excited to continue on this journey with all of you as we navigate the multitude of challenges and the opportunities for personal growth that we've all been facing in this past year. So with that in mind, I'm sort of taking this talk in a different direction. I'm not going to be really speaking about any particular techniques, but what I'm going to share with you today is my personal journey with natural dyes as a way of exploring with you some of my thoughts in how we got here and where we're going. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okie dokie. So for the past 15 years, I've been living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and that's really where I developed this love of natural dyes and plants through my work at the University of California Botanical Garden at Berkeley. And through that experience, I had the chance to collaborate with amazing dyers who live in the Bay Area, scholars, scientists at Berkeley. But I've recently made a move up to Portland during this pandemic time. And so it's been a really important time for me to take stock of what I'm doing with natural dyes and what it's all about and where I'm trying to go with this. So my background is, one of my passions is ethnobotany, which is the study of the complex relationships between plants and people across space and time. And ethnobotany is, it's an interdisciplinary subject that weaves together chemistry, politics, international relations, textiles, patent law, history, geography, anthropology, and of course, botany. And that's what I love so much about this field, is that it's really a subject that brings together everyone to the table to have conversations about the thing that is central for all of us, which is plants. Some people call ethnobotany the science of survival because we're all dependent on plants. We all need plants. Plants provide the material for everything we use. And of course, in the past 150 years, that dependence has switched as we shift toward man-made materials and technologies. But at the core, our food, our fiber, our medicine, our color is all derived from plants. And what you're seeing now is just some images of plants from my backyard, the transformation of persimmons into hoshigaki. And so whether or not our relationship with plants is directly linked with survival, or whether it's for the aspects of our lives that just simply define what it means to be human, such as wood providing the material for instrument making, and instruments being a way in which we create and hear music. Or similarly for color, providing a sense of beauty and connection and create a sense of place or identity. Plants are amazing and central to what it means to be human, and they're going to be the main hinge upon which I go through this talk. So when we think of anthropology, when we think of ethnobotany, we often think about the other, about someone living in a far off place, but there's actually a whole emergent field of urban ethnobotany, and that's something that really interests me. Urban ethnobotany studies the rich, dynamic worlds within cities, and where people carry traditions of plants with them, where they are, and how they bring that knowledge and even plant material with them. So this is an image of a South Indian woman who lives in Houston, where my in-laws family is from. And she has a bona fide botanical garden in her backyard with hundreds of species of plants from South Asia that she uses for food, for medicine, for herbs, and just for having a sense of place and a foundation in her backyard. And visiting with her and just navigating the process of finding her through a friend of a friend of a friend. Oh, you're interested in plants, you might want to go see her backyard. Just that whole process is why I do what I do. And I think that we often think of it as something happening far away or when we travel, but actually those opportunities exist for us right where we are, wherever we are. So many of us, I would guess, probably live in an urban environment, or at least live in developed nations such as the US. And we think about traditional dyes as well, coming from far off places or made by artisans who've had endless generations working on these things. But I'm just going to start off with a provocation to rethink who are the creators, who are the keepers of the knowledge, and what are the ways in which we can reframe the other to think of ourselves as having this relationship with plants. And that's what I want to focus on today. And I will ask this again and again, which is, what is your relationship with plants? It's sort of that question that we've asked ourselves a lot in the environmental movement of, are we nature? Are we part of nature? Or are we separate? And so it's sort of a play on that. So we're here through a common love for natural dyes, but are we putting in the work of this relationship with plants? Are we having the two-way conversation going between plants and people? So I'm going to share with you a snapshot of things that I've been involved with. These photos sort of represent the past decade, but really my work in natural dyes has been over the past 15 years. And of course, my lifetime of having this relationship with plants, not always at the forefront and maybe in a background way, but always having a relationship with plants. I grew up in rural Ohio, but my parents are from Southern India and took us back every single summer. And so there was always this background experience of seeing people and plants interacting with each other every day. So probably one way in which we can all relate to this relationship with plants is through food. And food is probably the most fundamental way in which we touch, we consume plants on a daily basis, but also surely if you are natural dyer, you also touch and interact with and transform plants on a daily basis. Food is really a big part of my work. Here's just a spice container from my pantry and a recipe that I developed with the Oaktown Spice Shop in Oakland, California, to teach about chai and just using chai as a vehicle through which to talk about culture, geography, botany, chemistry, history. I just really love the cup of chai as this representation of all of these facets of the plant and people-human relationship. And to me, similarly, each dye pot has that same opportunity of exploring the plant, where it comes from, what it's used for, how it grows, where it grows, who uses it, why do we use it? So just exploring all of these questions and deepening and strengthening our connection with our plants is really important to me. So we're going to emphasize this word relationships. So along this journey, I really got inspired to work with natural dyes because I'm interested in food and my love of plants. And I came to UC Berkeley in 2006 with a undergraduate degree in medical anthropology. But soon after arriving at the UC Botanical Garden, I discovered the world of natural dyes and fibers. This got me just endlessly excited. But it also got me a little bit upset because in a personal note, because I was so invested in organic food and slow food and the farmers markets, but I had no concept of where my clothing came from. I was still consuming fast fashion. It was such a foreign concept to me that plants could provide color. So I was determined to raise awareness of plants for fibers and dyes. And this is an image of a workshop we had with two amazing dyers who came from Brazil to the UC Botanical Garden. Luckily at the UC Botanical Garden, we had this treasure trove of information. It was a long lost exhibit of fiber and dye plants that our docents had created in the early 90s. And when I arrived in 2006, it wasn't put on view. And so opening up these boxes and discovering this signage and these artifacts and plant lists and self-guided tour that went along with it was just like a treasure chest for me. So it was then in 2006, I also met Sasha Dur, who I know is a good friend of Botanical Colors, and she continues to be a real inspiration and collaborator and friend for me. We revived the exhibit. We added some new signage. We brought up to date the concept of eco-fashion and sustainability. And since 2007, this exhibit has been on view in the month of March, and it has developed into a month-long festival of classes and workshops, tours, and really conversations and community building. We have an amazing community of people who come to the UC Botanical Garden year after year, and there's really just been a snowball effect of people who've been working with natural dyes for decades, or people who have been newly interested in it, where we can come together and learn new techniques to honor traditions. And for the past few years, we've had the opportunity to bring, bring international speakers. So here's just a view of a seed workshop I taught as a part of the fiber and dye exhibit a few years ago, and just some of our displays and discoveries, and some of the material from the garden. On the right is matter from our herb garden. On the left are hops. And here's our conference center. This was also a couple of photos here of the of Eber and Leica, who came from Brazil. They came to the garden on March 14th and 15th, 2020. It was the very last day before things really shifted. So that was quite a profound experience for everyone who was there. We've hosted Michel Garcia several times, and Michel really inspires me because he brings such an enthusiasm and love and passion for plants and color, and this endless curiosity for discovering new plants. So he came to the garden last time and was on this mission to find this particular fern that was a bioaccumulator of aluminum. So we searched it out and found a horticulturist who was able to cut a bit of a frond for us. And he tested it out just immediately. And that tenacity, that passion, that is something that really inspires me. We also took a tour together of the Hearst Museum of Anthropology's collection of California native baskets, and just going through that collection with him was just a good reminder of what is our personal journey and what is it that just brings out that passion, that excitement, that curiosity in us. So it's just remarkable. And I was honored to grow for him all of this indigo, all of this Polygonum tinctorum, and in my backyard, and I brought to him for a workshop, and he transformed that into the most saturated indigo pigment, and it was just a great experience. And so there we are in our indigo shirts, and just coming together for a love of the plant. We've continued this learning community online, and this is Greti Seken, who's a professor emeritus of chemistry, and she'll be teaching again this March, but this is from last April. She always comes and revives us with her love of chemistry and phytochemistry and kind of the chemistry behind dye plants. So that's really important to me to have that as a part of our programming year after year. So the garden has led me in a lot of different directions, but one of them was to Oaxaca to attend the 10th International Symposium of Shibori and to present to this international audience what we're doing at the Botanical Garden with fibers and dye plants. And the reason why I wrote this paper and gave this talk on the role of botanical gardens in preserving natural dye plants was that I really believe that having plants at the center, knowing the plants, knowing the species, and supporting botanical gardens who work in conservation and research and education is really an important place. So I hope to make plants kind of at the center of the work that we all do with natural dyes. Here are those familiar pomegranates and persimmons, but in a different context. So it's just really fun to work with plants and go to new places and see how related species or the same species are used in different ways or in the same ways. So Oaxaca was a really amazing trip for me, visiting with paper makers and just seeing plants everywhere, people using plants. Here's Alejandra, the director of the Ethnobotanical Garden, who's one of my mentors. And then markets, markets to me are just my favorite place to be, where you see this relationship between plants and people on a daily basis, the interaction. And so to be able to appreciate and observe that is something I really strive for. And just some continuity with last week, here's a visit to the cochineal farm just outside of Oaxaca. It's amazing. So as I was saying, botanical gardens to me are the perfect home for learning about natural dyes. They're living museums that aim to educate the public on plants, work toward conservation and research. And to me, being a natural dyer has to involve knowing the plants, what they are, what their names are, the species name, how they grow, why they provide color, understanding a bit about this phytochemistry, and so much more. So it really made sense to me to have this strong program of natural dyes at the UC Botanical Garden. I found some old booklets that were published by the Brooklyn Botanic Gardens called Dye Plants and Dyeing, and some of you might be familiar with those journals that really brought together stories, recipes, people's experience working with color in different ways. And that inspired me to create Verdant Color, which was the Bay Area Natural Dye Journal that I published through my personal organization project, which I call Plants People, in 2014. So this kind of sprung off, well, this just sort of represents my kind of whole world of developing a personal practice of teaching dye workshops from my backyard and with local organizations, collaborating with various designers, doing different projects, exploring natural dyes, traveling around the country, teaching, just getting people to be inspired and love plants and see them in this new way through their ability to provide color. And this nurtured my personal interest in developing an art practice with dye plants. So Judy Petit, who I think has spoken here as well, who's just an amazing dyer and artist who's kind of paved the way in the world of plant pigments and paints. She invited me to give a solo exhibition in her art gallery at Los Medanos College in Pittsburgh, California. And so I titled this exhibit Iron and Wine, and I wanted to elevate the plants. So I brought these 9 dye plants into the gallery, and that was part of the exhibit, is just to place them on this pedestal. And I was also exploring iron. So I had this installation with rusted nails. I was also really exploring seeds at the time. So these are images of 10 dye plants seeds, and taking a close-up view and just getting inspiration from that. And then that led to an invitation to be a resident dyer at the Possible, which was an exhibit at the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive in 2014, where I was one of 3 resident natural dyers. And through that experience of spending 4 months in the museum, just made all sorts of things with natural dyes. Here, these are rusty nail tea bags and flags with olive, exploring forms of plants. These are the different inflorescence arrangements, which is the flowering structures. It's a way of sort of identifying and classifying plants. And then this gigantic steam bundle art performance where we invited people to come and just spread out material on this piece of silk that was then rolled up and bundled up and steamed up, and then it was processed through the exhibit and then hung as a flag over the courtyard gallery. So this process of exploring color through art really freed up my work with natural dyes. Maybe at the time I was a little unsure of how my skills were developing, and following recipes and understanding mordanting and all of those technical aspects. But actually it was through art and developing this love that those technical aspects really began to hone in as I was wanting to be sure I could achieve the colors that I envisioned and desired and what possibilities a plant could provide. So I'm kind of come at it through developing this love, and through that love, the technical skills will always follow. And I was just exploring different ways of presenting plants visually so that the plants could always be presented next to the color, and engaging community. And here is a group of people who came to the museum one day, and we collected olive leaves and fruits that had fallen to create this kind of peace wreath. And here's another show with exploring marigolds. So here's just, I'm going to continue on a journey just showing of various aspects of projects I've been involved with. Here you have at the SF Asian Art Museum, working with a group of teenagers through 3 different series of workshops all about flowers. So we made flower offerings in the traditional Balinese way. We made dyes with flowers. I've given workshops at Facebook. Here's at the Berkeley Horticultural Nursery. Dyeing small lines of clothing for various designers. This is using a traditional dye combination of myrobalan and iron and jaggery for a handful of khadi garments. did a project with Allbirds. I mean, you name it. Working with LA-based designer Jenny Kane. I think this is Facebook again. We did a whole series of projects for their designers to kind of explore different ways of creativity. And for me, just bringing the plants in bundles, people using plants, that's all really, really important to me. So teaching along the way, Farm Alley is a summer camp that I do out in West Marin, California every year. And there we explore with kids just the various possibilities. Through Plants People, I started just collecting dyes from India that I would bring. Here's red sandalwood. I started the possibility of kind of harvesting all the material that I was growing in my backyard and kind of selling locally available material and being involved with Fiber Shed through that way, exploring pigments and painting. And so all the while I had my foundation at the Botanical Garden, and we were forming relationships with a lot of local designers and artists. And over the past 10 years, we've presented 3 fashion shows in our Redwood Grove that have been fundraisers for the UC Botanical Garden. And these have just really been beautiful occasions to not only showcase the work of local designers who work with plant-based fibers and dyes, but also for our audience who may not have that experience or interest to visually see this represented in such a profound and beautiful way. I think Sasha's quotation from the last one was that it felt like a commitment ceremony to climate change. It was just a really beautiful way. Someone else told me at the fashion show that they felt that time had stopped and that they were in tears. And so this is in our Redwood Grove, which is a 7-acre part of the Botanical Garden where we have pretty much all redwoods. We have this amphitheater, and it just is the perfect setting for this. So I've always liked to toggle between the local and global, and I've always traveled to India, but in the past 10 years, I've gone, in the past 15 years, I've gone specifically to explore the world of natural dyes there, to look at Ayurvedic dyes and to see how various communities there are utilizing natural dyes. And much like here, dyes are becoming a niche market, an artisan market, an affluent market, and they have a cachet among people who are interested in organic living and sustainable lifestyle. And this is primarily from my experience in Chennai in Tamil Nadu. So there are specialty collections of saris that are natural dyed. And when I've taught workshops there, emerging designers have come, or those who are interested in a more eco-friendly lifestyle have come. And then I also had this interested in exploring the world of medicinal dyes. And so I went on a solo journey to Kerala. But really, I think the most important thing, those are almost asides, is going and reconnecting with this interconnectedness between plants and people on a daily basis that you see on the street. So here's just an image of flower garlands being sold before a temple, jasmine garlands that are sold to people who put them in their hair every day. On the right is the holy basil in my family's home and backyard that has its own altar. So every morning, kind of honoring this plant. Here's our cow that comes to visit for our compost every morning, and my mom processing various greens, and that daily relationship of every day you go to the market and get the food that you're going to eat that day is really profound. When I was little and coming to visit this town, the only mode of transportation really was these horse-led carriages. And this past visit in 2018, this is the last remaining horse-drawn carriage in the town. So just also witnessing the change. Our vegetable vendor, lily pads used for packaging food or as plates, compostable plates, and these column designs, which are just outside of everyone's house. And during this particular season, there's a little cow dung patty and a squash blossom that's there in the center. The utilization of all parts of the plants, the banana leaf, well, actually the leaves are not pictured here, but yes, the banana leaves, but the flowers, the stem, and the fruits, of course. Placing altars, fruit vendor making a small altar to pray and hope for a good sale for that day. And then these food traditions that are just incredible, of this gooseberry pickle on the right. So all the while, I was really continuing to love growing plants. And to me, growing plants is one of the most important ways of connecting with nature and natural dyes. I was fortunate enough to have a backyard in Berkeley where I grew a lot of dye plants. And around 2015, I reconnected with Helen Krayanoff, who's an artist and nursery woman. And she and I collaborated to write this book, 10 Plants for Color. And this was such an important chapter in my natural dye experience, because I realized that growing plants and using those plants for color is really what is really profound for me. What makes me feel so good is growing these plants in my backyard. Here we were testing for over a year, a season, how these plants grow, how much we could harvest from them. And just having that experience in my own home was great. Kind of freely sitting back there harvesting. I love foraging, but sometimes there's that little feeling of nervousness when you're doing it. And so just growing my own plants and picking them freely was just fantastic. So, so 10 Plants for Color was really, really such an important chapter of my dye journey. And there's my backyard and just doing dyeing with Anthemis tinctorum and all these great plants. It's unfortunately, our book is out of print right now. We sold out 3 times. So we're kind of in conversations around what we should do next. Love for someone to pick it up. We might self-publish it again. We might make an electronic version. Not sure. A lot of workshops around the book. And this is a little view of Helen's nursery. And she was growing and selling the dye plants. And so we picked 10 plants that were really easy to grow from seed and grew really well and created prolific amounts of flowers so that you would have all the material you needed for dye projects. And there's one of Sasha and Helen. Helen's also so generous, and she was giving Sasha a bunch of dye plants to plant out in the CCA garden. So around the time my son was born, there were a lot of different projects that came up. One of them was to challenge myself to create a garment for him from plum leaves. And that whole project is documented on my website through the work of Unfarmed. And I just really relished in the opportunities to have the connections with plants on a daily basis at home, whether it was just using handmade soaps made from neem or incorporating vetiver dried bundles, celebrating various Hindu festivals with Ganesha's favorite grasses, all the while kind of harvesting. On the right, there's my Hopi black dye sunflowers, appreciating plants and the various ways in which they're involved. So there's my daughter's first birthday where she was just covered in flowers. And I put in this picture just as a reminder of just from birth, kind of, I'm so lucky. I feel so lucky to have this cultural inheritance of from birth, we're just covered in plants. There's other festivals in which you have to sprout 9 different types of grains. And then kind of my own way of growing my plants and creating things and experiences for my kids to have this daily interaction with plants. Trying to walk the walk of, we insulated our house with denim, with recycled denim. And just there on my right side is my coffee plant that is just kind of one of my treasures. And honestly, it's such a simple thing, but when I drink my coffee and I look at the coffee plant, something happens. I can't really describe it. So I'm just gonna go through these, but I mean, just teaching kids how to observe and draw plants. And this was a salad that had like 35 different weeds and edible flowers. And it was made by this these women who run a company called Potlicker for an international ethnobotany symposium that I organized a couple of years ago. And when I moved up to Oregon, the first place we stayed there were these California poppies, and it was just such a great reminder of just these plants representing home. So shifting gears, I went to pursue a master's degree in England in ethnobotany in particular, the only program that I know of. It was housed at the University of Kent in Kew. So we took the whole family, went on a sabbatical. And there I just wanted to deepen my understanding of ethnobotany so I could frame and understand the work that we're doing in the US and in cities and contextualize that with indigenous cultures, both here and around the world. So this program was fantastic. I got to see so many amazing things in the UK, traveled to Morocco, studying natural dyes, but also just loving and appreciating people's relationships to place and all the ways in which that experience is manifested. So I met natural dyers all throughout the UK in various projects, learned more about creating plant vouchers and conducting ethnobotanical research, visiting Stonehenge and seeing the dwellings, recreations of the dwellings in which the builders lived in and how they're related to plants, cycles, nature. And just learning so much. This was a really fun project where we took Ras el Hanout, the spice blend, and dissected it. This one had about 43 different ingredients in it, and we had to identify each and every one of them. So my work really largely focused on plants, kind of Indian heritage plants. So I did a project on Rudraksha, the prayer beads, and went to Kew's Museum of Economic Botany to study these beads. Visited Oxford Botanic Gardens and Cambridge Botanic Gardens and studied baskets. And just a nod back to the hoshigaki, this is actually a parcel of persimmon of hoshigaki inside of there, and it was made with the hand twine and how they were packaged up. It just really beautiful to me. I did a whole study on coconuts, which is endlessly fascinating. And actually that could be a whole nother lecture on coconuts and how Europe's need for creating butter, or Europe's butter shortage led to the creation of margarine, which utilized coconut and also annatto to dye it. So that's a whole nother story. And it also led me to markets, ethnic markets, and that all kind of, this is the Eden Project, which is a fascinating ethnobotanical garden in Cornwall. And that all led me to my ultimate thesis project, which is about ritual use of plants among transnational communities in the US. So I came back to the Bay Area and I studied how people bring knowledge of plants with them, but specifically ritual plants. And I went to this temple in the Bay Area and just kind of planted myself there and studied all aspects of plant use in that temple. So when I returned, this is just part of my project and doing various research methods to study and understand which plants were kind of most utilized, and just a snapshot of some of my work. When I returned with this renewed interest, and obviously this is since lockdown here, dyeing masks. I returned with this renewed interest, but also trepidation in grappling with some of the questions of why we're using natural dyes. Why are they experiencing such a resurgence? And why is there such a longing for this connection to plants? But also thinking a little bit about exploitation and our entrepreneurial lens with natural dyes, and thinking about the ways in which that is maybe self-serving and perhaps unhealthy. So I do want to ask you to think about, why are you doing what you're doing with natural dyes? And in my workshops, people always ask, how can I get this color and that color? And what are the exact measurements? And is this one light fast? And to me, it's not about the answers to any of those questions. It's technical fluency and ease comes with a true love, a relationship, and a practice, a ritual, really. So for me, I've never thought of myself as someone who can teach recipes. But what I hope I can do is inspire people to love plants and what they're doing and want to learn how to do it better because they truly have a purpose and calling to do it. So when people ask, well, which plants can I use to get purple, for example, I say, well, what are you trying to make and what are your goals? There's really not a one size fits all answer to these questions. And these are kind of difficult questions to have in a class, that's 3 or 4 hours long and people are coming with certain expectations. And I'm not trying to proselytize or philosophize, but I'm trying to ask what the purpose is, because I think that purpose really influences what materials you use and what process you use and what your intention is. Just some kind of the world we live in now with natural dyes. And so, yeah, what is your intention and what practices can you do on a daily basis that can help cultivate that? So I think that if you're interested in exploring color, there's no rules. If you're interested in starting a line, dyeing professionally, there's a lot of rules and you want to have consistency. But the one size fits all method just doesn't work. So why do you do natural dyes? What is your relationship with plants? And how can you just bring joy and love and honor this timeless tradition and relationship with plants that we all have? Whether for some of us, it might be a generation ago, or maybe it's a few more generations ago to find it. We all have this relationship with plants. And I just want to end with, I was giving a talk to the Ruth Bancroft Garden on ethnobotany of succulents. And I just had this amazing experience that I love to share, because I was going to the local copy center to print out my notes, and I printed them out, and the woman who was working there printed them out for me, and she noticed that it said ethnobotany of succulents, and I think I might have had Opuntia on the cover or something. And no, I had a sempervirums. And she said, oh, my grandmother used to use hen. She said, do you know hen and chicks? And I said, yes, of course I know hen and chicks. She said, well, my grandmother used to use hen and chicks for us whenever we had an earache. And I was like, oh my goodness, tell me more about it. And so she said that her grandmother is Native American from Oklahoma. And she would, for all the grandkids, whenever they would have an earache, she would squeeze a little bit of the juice into their ears and it would make it better. So she was like, it's so interesting to me that I see all the, popularity of succulents. And I always think whenever I see that plant of my grandmother. So just that little story, that we all have stories, we all have knowledge. And so I guess the ending is really connect with people and connect with plants. And it's amazing what you will find. So that's just a little bit of the lens through which I view my work. And so I want to thank, just a few people who have just been so amazing to me along the way. And I'm not really on social media, or my website is totally out of date, but you can send me an email. I love to talk and connect with you. So thank you very much. And happy to answer any questions that you might have if there's time. I don't know how long
we have time, Deepa. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And thank you for continually focusing us on plants, and plants is kind of the center of everything that we do, wear, eat, and are healed by. So Amy is just going to jump in with all the questions.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And I love that you also touched upon, the question of kind of goals for why we dye and why we want to natural dye, and kind of what the things that we are asking our dyes to do. I mean, that was definitely a question we had when we were talking about stains and dyes, and people having objections to having that exploration of color because there are more stains than dyes. But again, asking why you want to use the dye will give you this kind of, what you get out of the dye. Now, that's enough of Amy. All right. So, so let's see, Gretchen's asking, I hope you can share a few stories of how plants are used for dye in different locations in the world, stories that you've been able to learn through your ethnobotany studies that we might not have heard?
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like,
There's this amazing plant, and I'm just trying to search for the botanical name. It's called nochi, and I discovered it in South India. It's also called chase tree. And it made the most beautiful teal, like glittering metallic teal. I don't know, this is what has come up for me because I've always wanted to. I dyed with it in a workshop. Someone brought it to me, and we dyed on raw silk, and it made this most glimmering, glistening teal color. And it was just, it's a common street tree, which is why my friend Sangeeta had suggested it. And if I can come up with the botanical name, I'll try to think of it. But this is the chase tree. That's the common name, and the botanical name. I mean, to me, the plants are, of course, I've worked a lot with madder in South India. That's a really common one. That's such a, I mean, we all have no madder, and but working with it in different ways is pretty neat. Going to local markets, talking to people about what they use and why. I mean, that's really fascinating to me. And discovering new and unusual plants. Yeah, I guess I don't have, I mean, I have specifics, but I'm wondering how to kind of present that. But there are plants everywhere, as you know, and everywhere you go, I think that process of discovery is just really exciting. And I think it takes a while to learn and understand them. We have a tendency to want to know the recipe and what plant and things, but like for example, with the madder, it's sold in the medicinal store in South India. So there's no really like a natural dye store in a lot of the places I've traveled to down there. So it's like knowing the plant, its name in the local language, and then where you might need to go to find it is in itself a fascinating process of learning and observing where that plant is placed in context within the culture. So you go to the herbal store to find the dye plants because a lot of time there's overlap between the dye plants and the other plants.
all right. There's like some thick questions here. Have you ever had a chance to look into the Bengal famine caused by forced indigo planting in Bengal, right? Bengal, I was Bengal, Bengal, under the East India Company. So have you ever had a chance to look into it? I have.
I haven't personally done work with that, but there is an organization, I think it's called Aranya, and there are several scholars and amazing activists who work on kind of decolonization around indigo and cotton, which of course India has a rough history with. But you know what to me is really amazing as I connect the dots between textiles and dyes and Indian heritage is just looking at the Indian flag of independence and seeing that wheel representing the spinning wheel and how homespun, hand spun clothes were the symbol of independence. It's just kind of amazing to me how much symbolism our fabric and cloth carry with it. And if we choose to let that symbolism speak, what opportunities we all have in just being who we are with what we're wearing.
Mm-hmm. Here's a good one from Peggy Ornstein. Thank you, Deepa. Such a great talk. Have you explored dyeing with mushrooms or lichen at all? Apparently, mushrooms are being reclassified as being closer to humans than many plants.
Hi, Peggy. We have hosted a lot of mushroom dyeing workshops at the Botanical Garden, and recently we've also had some lichen dyeing workshops as well. So those are two worlds of absolutely fascinating color that I would encourage you all. I haven't, in my personal work, I haven't gone down that route. Every now and then someone will bring me something. Someone brought me these Dermocybe semi-sanguineous red dye mushrooms. And so I dyed some wool with that. But there's so many directions to go in. And people ask me that with indigo too. And indigo to me is like a lifetimes of work, that it's not necessarily in what I can do in this one lifetime. So there's a lot of great resources out there on mushrooms and lichens, and they are really cool organisms.
Yeah, Kathy, I think we still have that mushroom book on our site. I think we still do.
We have a book by Karen Castleman. Those of you who've, she's from, I believe, Nova Scotia. She's a very comprehensive dyer and researcher on lichens. And yeah, there's a Dover book called Lichens that we have.
We've actually just had two amazing talks at the Botanical Garden, not necessarily about dyes, but more about mushrooms and lichens separately, just sort of their science behind them and what they are. So I would really encourage you, all of that information deepens your knowledge as a dyer. I would encourage you to get involved, stay in touch with the UC Botanical Garden. Now that we're presenting Zoom talks, no matter wherever you are, you might be interested in something, but even your own local garden or just other kind of plant organizations. I just got the latest issue of the California Native Plant Society's newsletter called Flora. And there's so much good info here that's not directly dye recipes or whatever, but inspiration on plants and the background. And there's actually a little article in here about my work, but it's just reminded me that, gosh, looking for info in what you might think of as unexpected places, but find the plant people, because the plant people know what is going on.
Yeah.
Like, go to the plant people.
Hurry up.
They know everything. Hey, Kathy, let's take one more question. And sorry, you guys, we can't get to, I see there's a lot more underneath here.
Yes.
But I wanted to know as well, one of the first few slides had a picture of something like eggshells or clamshells, says Barb. What are they really? They
It
had
was pottery.
Violety, like a pretty
Pottery?
I think that what you are probably referring to is this photo that I have. It's from Oaxaca. It's actually a calabash. It's the calabash tree that makes these incredible fruits that have this hard shell, and those hard outer coatings are what are used for vessels for a variety of things, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. And I just love that photo because that, I think vessels and containers and basketry is actually a whole world of plant fibers that I'm so fascinated in, because if you actually think about the technology of what having a container enables us to do, it's actually really quite fascinating. But those smaller calabash bowls are used for drinking mezcal, and the larger ones are used for all sorts of things.
All right. Can I just give a little shout out to Valeska, who's I just saw Valeska's on here with the mic. There's a bunch of Micah students on the call.
Great. Hi, everyone.
So hi to Micah.
All right, Amy, I'm going to close it out here. All right, we're wrapping up, and just a couple of things. We opened up a doll making class, our first ever, with John Marshall. As you know, John and I go way back. We're good friends, and he spent so much time in Japan studying with actual like living cultural treasure kind of people. and trained as a doll maker in his early career. And we just decided for Hinamatsuri, which is the Girls' Day festival where they have these displays of intricate dolls, that he would teach a doll class. So that's up on the site. He's creating all the kits and materials for this. So any of you who know John and have been at his vast warehouse of textiles in Mendocino will know that you're going to get some really beautiful stuff. So join us for that if you can. It's Wednesday, March 3rd, which is Dolls Day or Girls' Day, and it'll run from 9 in the morning till 11:30. So it's going to be really great. Also, we have on our donation page, we're trying to really spotlight BIPOC farmers and growers, many of who are growing for us. So we can offer things at Botanical Colors for you. Some of them are Blue Light Junction. We have their Persicaria tinctoria seeds on sale here, as well as some growers that will be doing flowers for us later on in the season. So if you can donate, we'd appreciate that, because that goes straight back to them. And finally, next week for Feedback Friday, we are so pleased to be welcoming Sarah Pottle and Jess Boki, who are twin sisters from Cleveland, Ohio, natural dyers, educators, activists, and are the co-founders of the Rust Belt Fiber Shed, as well as Drift Lab Textile Company. Sarah and Jess are going to share their story about how natural dyes, textiles, and community projects can be one effective entry point to systemic change, and discuss how stewardship is the anchor of their project. So I'm really interested in hearing about this, because we don't get to hear as much shared from the middle of the country, and it's an incredible resource for us. So we welcome them next week. With that, I just want to thank you all and say, go ahead and unmute. Let's everybody say hello.
Deepa.
And good to see you. Heidi Iverson, I got my lip
Fantastic.
gloss on. See your blue hands.
Hi.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
Hi, guys. Hi,
Fantastic.
Peggy. Hi,
Hi.
everyone. Oh, hey.
Thank you.
Hi, Deanna.
Hey,
Oh,
Thank you.
gallery view. I can see everyone.
Kathy.
Oh, there's LED. Hi. Hi, Suzanne. Hi.
Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Deepa, do you see
Thank
the
you.
chat?
Sarah, I just saw
Lord.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Hi,
I
Betsy.
actually, sorry, I've been like
Thank
scanning
you. Good night.
because it's so heartwarming. Thank
I
you.
know. I'm like, you better look at that chat, because there's so many nice notes to you. in there.
Yeah, they're really nice notes. That'd be
Yeah.
great.
was
Oh, hi,
wonderful,
Betty.
Deepa. Thank you.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
Good night, you guys.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Hi, Sasha.
Did you say
Thank
you?
Thank you.
all.
Thanks, guys. Deepa, that was such an amazing talk.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. It was just so nice to have the opportunity to sort of take stock of what's been going on, and
Yeah,
just kind of
fantastic.
share some of my thinkings around it.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to end the recording.
Oh, yeah.